Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're looking at something kind of specific, but with surprisingly big environmental ripples. We're talking about federal law and, well, rodents, specifically nutria.
Right, these large semi-aquatic rodents originally from South America.
Yeah, exactly. Our mission for you today is to follow the legislative trail, starting with a very recent bill and then digging back to see where it all began.
Really shows how targeted legislation can tackle, quite specific ecological problems.
Okay, so let's start with the latest thing, H.R.776, the Nutria Eradication and Control Reauthorization Act of 2025. Passed the House February 4th, 2025, went to the Senate the next day. Sounds official, but what's it actually do?
Well, the key word there is reauthorization. This bill, H.R.776, it isn't setting up some brand new thing. It's basically extending the funding, the appropriations for a program that already exists. It amends the original 2003 law.
How so?
It changes one date, it strikes 2025 and puts in 2030. Simple as that, really.
So it gives the program another 5 years of potential funding.
Exactly. 5 more years of financial support for controlling these nutria.
Which means there was an original act, right? If this is a reauthorization.
Precisely. And that takes us back to H.R.776, the Nutria Eradication and Control Act of 2003.
Okay, 2003. That became Public Law 108-16. What was the situation back then that made Congress act?
Well, the 2003 Act itself lays out the context. Congress made some really important findings.
Like what?
They recognized just how valuable the wetlands and tidal marshes are, especially in places like the Chesapeake Bay and Louisiana.
Economically, ecologically.
Both. Huge benefits. Think nurseries for fish and shellfish, storm buffers, wildlife habitat, just incredibly important ecosystems.
Okay, vital resources, but threatened.
Severely.
Yeah.
And the main culprit identified in the act, Myocastor coypus, the nutria.
So these rodents were causing serious damage.
Oh, yeah. The act specifically says they were contributing to substantial marsh loss. They eat the roots of the marsh plants, the whole structure collapses, turns into open water or mudflats.
Wow. Undermining the whole ecosystem.
Exactly. And it was happening on federal land, state land, private land. And the act noted that, traditional ways of controlling them hadn't really worked, especially in Maryland.
So the problem was getting worse.
Accelerating, according to the findings. Which led to the 2003 Act's purpose.
Which was?
To authorize the Secretary of the Interior to give money, financial assistance, to Maryland and Louisiana.
Specifically for what?
For programs to eradicate or control the nutria population, and importantly, to restore the marshland they damaged.
So a two-pronged approach. Deal with the cause and fix the damage.
Right. The goals were pretty clear. Get rid of nutria entirely in Maryland, and either eradicate or control them in Louisiana and potentially other states, and restore the marshes.
Did it specify how?
For Maryland, yes. It mentioned the program had to include management, research, and public education consistent with a Fish and Wildlife Service plan from March 2002.
So it was a thought-out strategy. And the funding, you mentioned financial assistance.
Yeah, it wasn't trivial. The 2003 Act authorized $4 million for Maryland and $2 million for Louisiana per year from fiscal 2004 to 2008.
That's a decent amount of money back then.
And the federal government would cover up to 75% of the program costs.
Okay, so fast forward to today. We have H.R. 776 extending this potentially through 2030. What does that tell us?
Well, it definitely suggests this isn't a quick fix. The fact that we need reauthorization after reauthorization, it implies the nutria problem is persistent.
So the fight's ongoing.
It seems so. These legislative efforts highlight how we respond to very specific ecological threats, but also that these responses also need to be sustained long-term commitments.
It's not just pass a law and forget it.
Not for something like invasive species control and complex ecosystems, no. It requires continuous effort, monitoring, and, crucially, funding.
So we started with H.R. 776, the 2025 update, just extending the timeline.
Right, keeping the existing program going.
And then we jump back to H.R. 273, the 2003 original, to see why this program even exists, this major threat to vital wetlands from, well, nutria.
Yeah, it's a fascinating case study in targeted environmental legislation. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it?
Wonder what?
What other, maybe less high-profile laws are out there, quietly working on specific, persistent problems that most people have never even heard of.
That's a great point. For you listening, this dive shows how government tries to tackle these focused environmental crises. Sometimes the fix isn't quick, it takes decades.
Decades of sustained work.
So think about it. What other specific, maybe surprising long-term challenge might you find hidden in the legislative record if you started digging?